Hello, everyone. Good evening. It is 8 o'clock, but we'll give everyone a few minutes as they kind of start to roll in. If you are here, we cannot, for some reason, the chat function isn't working for me. I can't see it. I can see a notification, but I can't actually see what's in the chat. So I'm going to ask you to use the Q&A exclusively tonight. So please, if you are already online, let us know where you're from. We'd love to know where you're from. And it looks like a poll has come up. So if you could let us know what your background is, if you're a student athlete, if you're a dietitian, athletic trainer, that would be great. A coach, again, in the chat, I'm sorry, not in the chat. I keep saying chat, but I mean in the Q&A, please put it in your name, where you're from. If there's a sport that you play or a sport that you coach, let us know. We'd love to know who we're talking with. And if you could do the poll, that would be most helpful as well. Again, if you hit oh, good. All right, we've got the Q&A going. So we see Cynthia from Alexandria as a dietitian, other dietitian, Allison from Texas, welcome. Thank you again, everyone, for using that Q&A. It's really helpful. I don't know, this happened last time in the last webinar that I did, the chat, for some reason, I can see notifications, but I cannot actually read it. So thanks for using that Q&A tonight instead. So tonight we're going to be discussing breakfast and performance. The presentation will be about 15 to 20 minutes long, and then we'll have time for Q&A. Again, another poll has just popped up. So if you could answer that, that would be super helpful to us. And again, if there's any questions, comments, go ahead and put them in that Q&A, not the chat tonight. Thanks. So we'll wait here another minute. If you could answer that poll. And those of you that are just coming on, please let us know where you're from, your background, if you're a coach, a dietitian, athletic trainer. Looks like we have a strength coach from Alabama. Hi, Deb. Thanks for coming on here tonight. And please put all your comments and questions in the Q&A section. I will do my best to kind of scroll through them as we go through the presentation. I may wait till the end. It's just a little bit easier to do that. A little bit easier to read them all at the end. Oops, another poll has popped up. All right, if you're just joining us, welcome. Why don't we go ahead and get started. Again, everyone that just joined, please don't use the chat tonight. Just use the Q&A because I can't actually read the chat. All right, well, let's go. Let's talk about building a better breakfast. Just a little bit about me. My name is Layla El-Masri. I am a sports dietitian. I've been in this field for quite some time. I used to be the head sports dietitian at the Naval Academy. So I've worked with almost every sport. And I've also done a lot of different things after that with a lot of different teams, from youth teams all the way to elite and professional athletes. I worked the Gatorade Sports Science Institute and the NBA G League. And I've also coached, and I'm going to go back to doing some coaching as well. So what we're going to talk about tonight is the importance of breakfast, the timing of breakfast, and how to build a proper breakfast plate. So if you are an athlete, we really want to focus on the how or the why, the timing, how to build that plate. And if you are a dietitian or a strength coach or a coach, these are things to kind of watch to see what your athletes are doing, maybe give them a little advice and steer them towards a sports dietitian to get some help if they need it. So the importance of breakfast, it turns your body on, it gives you it gets your metabolism going, boosts your energy. We really need it to fuel that empty tank. Really important, especially after a night's sleep, where we're utilizing the fuel overnight to build and repair our muscles. We've got to kind of wake up, refuel, so we can have enough energy for the activities, workouts, the academics. It's not always just about sports, but keeping us focused for academics as well as sports. And it also really encourages better eating throughout the day, which is so very important. A lot of athletes skip breakfast and then they reach for some things that are maybe not so good throughout the day. Again, that crucial piece for athletes, trying to get something in their system within about 30 minutes of waking up. The body wants fuel. A lot of athletes will say, I'm not very hungry, but most of the time, it's them just not understanding what it means to be hungry and not equating what's some of the signs of hunger, maybe getting a headache, maybe feeling sluggish, maybe feeling kind of cranky or angry or hangry. So we really need to first get them to figure out what it means to be hungry and then actually feeding themselves. So trying to get them to eat something within about 30 minutes after they wake up, at that time, remind them that their body wants fuel. It's kind of like a sponge. It wants to absorb that energy for the activity that they're going to be doing for that day. So the negative effects of skipping breakfast, we usually want to focus on the positives, but I think sometimes into this particular topic, athletes need to hear what is negatively happening with their body to get them kind of motivated to eat in the morning. So low fuel slows the metabolism. Again, it can cause some muscle breakdown, helping them equate that when the body is starved or stressed from lack of fuel, it drives the appetite and hunger, which can lead to overconsumption later in the day. And usually when they overeat later in the day, they're going to be choosing some foods that are of lesser quality. When they're so over hungry, they're going to eat the first thing and the fastest thing that they can find. And usually that is going to be something that's probably not that great, something that's not going to be that healthy, something that's not going to be that filling. And then they'll usually tend to eat more of it. So that energy imbalance, not having that consistent energy intake throughout the day, that energy imbalance can lead to, of course, poor performance and some of that unwanted weight gain. So timing and type of fuel, consumption, it really depends on when you need the fuel. All right. So trying to get an athlete to wake up in the morning and eat a huge amount of fuel, if they're not used to doing that, all right, that's not going to work. So if you're an athlete who's not used to consuming any type of breakfast in the morning, you need to slowly work yourself up to eating a decent sized meal, depending on when you're training. You can't go from 0 to 100. So we don't expect that of our athletes to have nothing and then sit down and have this huge meal. So slowly we want to work them up to getting their stomach used to consuming breakfast. Just as we're working another type of muscle, we want to work the stomach to accepting little amounts and over time getting them to eat something that's going to be substantial and filling. But also timing is important depending on when they need that fuel. So if someone is doing multiple workouts a day, or they tend to practice early in the morning, then they're probably going to want to eat a little bit smaller volume of fuel before exercise, and then they can eat a more hearty snack after exercise. But early training, you want to have low fiber, low fat. There's not going to be a lot of time to digest that fuel because they're not going to wake up at 3 a.m. if they're practicing at 6 a.m. So low fiber, low fat. If there's early training session, if they're not training early, then they have more time to have a nice balanced meal where they can have some whole grain carbohydrates with fiber, some lean protein, of course, and then some good fats. And so what does that balance look like? So when we talk about carbohydrates for that balanced plate, for that athlete that's going to have a workout a little bit later in the day, carbohydrates, we're going to use complex carbohydrates, or consume complex carbohydrates or encourage them. So things like oatmeal, whole wheat bread or whole grain, English muffins, tortillas, waffles, pancakes, and then of course encouraging those fruits and vegetables. And the veggies, of course, and things like eggs and omelets. So making sure that they're getting protein from maybe a type of egg, maybe dairy, milk, Greek yogurt, cottage cheese and fruit. Maybe, again, depending on the athlete and what they normally like for breakfast, if they have time to also consume, some lean meats, again, turkey, bacon, sausage, maybe chicken sausage. And then again, those fats are going to be sprinkled in throughout some of these particular foods, but we're trying to go for those unsaturated fats. So avocados, avocado toast, a lot of athletes like nuts, nut butters, or maybe the chia and the flax seeds. So really trying to utilize some of these. This is just some examples of different fuels, kind of putting them together and figuring out what the athlete likes and will eat. Of course, a lot of athletes are going to complain they don't have time. Time is always going to be an issue, especially if they're getting up for practices, or maybe they're getting up early for morning classes, and they just want rather sleep an extra 5 or 10 minutes than get up and make breakfast. So again, as dietitians, sports dietitians, our goal is to help, help you kind of figure that part out. How can you maybe allow yourself a little more time to make breakfast? Maybe you're still a younger athlete, you're living at home, you could have parents help. If you are not, if you're in college and beyond, and you're trying to figure out how to make that breakfast, maybe you can give yourself a little extra time. It doesn't usually take that long to make a lot of these things. You can put a waffles or some pancakes in the toaster, easily grab a piece of fruit while you're doing something else, and then sit down to eat. It usually doesn't take that long to eat. So maybe you can allow yourself a little bit more time in the breakfast, or time for breakfast. You can also prepare certain things the night before and just quickly heat them up. You can also do quick grab and go things and then have it while you're on your way to school or on your way to work or on your way to practice, something that you can consume in the car. So being creative in what you like and what you can take with you. But some ideas could be overnight oats. A sandwich is always easy. You can make a peanut butter and jelly sandwich the night before and just have it in the bag and ready to go. Omelets are obviously going to take a little bit longer, but pancakes, breakfast burritos, smoothies, fruit and yogurt, those are things you can make the night before. You can even throw it in the freezer and pull it out, the night before. It'll still be cold, but you can just take it with you. Yogurt parfaits, oatmeal, cereal, peanut butter and jelly, chocolate milk. These are all quick things to consume. Again, how much time you have is really going to be the determining factor of what you and where you eat. So we're going to go through a couple of case studies here. And again, please, I would love your feedback here. So if you can, as we go through this, just write your answers in the Q&A, please, not the chat, just because I can't see that chat this evening. So sorry, I have to move some things around so I can read the whole case study. So Kylie is a 19-year-old collegiate volleyball player. On Saturday, she has practice from 9:30 to 11:30 a.m. She usually wakes up about 8 a.m. in order to swing by the cafeteria to eat breakfast on her way to practice. Kylie normally enjoys a bagel with butter, piece of fruit, and tea. She has noticed that she is quite hungry during practice and turns to a sports dietitian for help. So here, the first question: why do you think Kylie feels? So why does Kylie feel hungry during practice? Does anyone kind of have an idea what we talked about? The timing? Is it the timing? Is it what she's eating? Is it when she's eating? If there's anyone there, kind of put that question in the Q&A. Right, and someone has written in that she really doesn't have a lot of protein in her breakfast, which is correct. So what do you think we could do to kind of make her meal more balanced in the morning? We don't necessarily need to completely change what she likes to do, but maybe we can add a little something to what she's already consuming to give her a little bit more fuel, a little more long-term fuel, so she can not be as hungry when she gets to practice. Any thoughts there? Quickly off the top of my head. For this one, I would recommend her switching that butter to maybe a nut butter, peanut butter, or another almond butter or another nut butter, whatever she can get her hands on. So that again is going to add some good source of fuel, keep her a little bit more full. In addition, it depends on, what the cafeteria is going to have, but, a lot of athletes now maybe can even make a sandwich in the morning. It depends on where you are with the cafeteria. You could make a sandwich out of your bagel instead of just adding the peanut butter on there. She could also, oops, I can see some of these things. You know what? Sorry, someone is responding in the chat, and I'm sorry, but I can't actually read that. So if you have something, please put it in the Q&A. So the peanut butter, yep, she could make an egg sandwich. She could add some cottage cheese. She could do a couple of different things there. Again, whatever the cafeteria has to offer, she could even throw some avocado on there. So there's a lot of different things that she could do. We don't have to drastically change what she's doing, what she likes, what's her routine, but we can enhance it and make it a little bit better. So what else can she do to ensure that she has enough fuel for that 2-hour session? What's something that we would suggest? Something easy, something quick. What can she do right as she's leaving the cafeteria? Because normally she's going to probably leave that cafeteria and still have another 45 minutes to an hour before she has practice. So I think one of the easiest things that she can do, because we want to have a good source of carbohydrates before practice. We're making sure that we're having carbohydrates before practice, not a lot of protein. So if she's eaten breakfast and she's done with breakfast by about 8:30 or 8:45, she gets to practice, she still has 45 minutes. One thing she can do as she's walking out of the cafeteria is grab a piece of fruit. All right, she can top off her fuel by having a good piece of fruit, some sort of carbohydrate to top her off, and that 2-hour practice will be a little bit easier. Of course, consuming some fuel during that 2-hour practice is important too, but one of the easiest things she can do is grab a piece of fruit on her way out the door, and then about a half an hour or so before, she can have that piece of fruit or a granola bar or something, and have that right before practice. So good answers there. I see a lot of those same things. So thanks for that. We're going to move on to another case study here. So the number 2, Jacob is a 16-year-old high school varsity basketball player that is struggling with low energy and muscle fatigue. School begins at 7:45 a.m. and team practices take place after school. Jacob often sleeps in late and doesn't have time to make or eat breakfast. He eats lunch at school, then doesn't eat again until he returns home after practice. At dinner, he often overindulges. Jacob's mom suggests he meet with a sports RD. So what is the first thing that you notice about Jacob's routine? And I would say this is pretty typical of a lot of high school student athletes, and I shouldn't say just high school, but I think a lot of youth athletes in general, or adolescent athletes, you can see that they often kind of skip that breakfast period, maybe have lunch, then don't really have anything else to eat until they get home, and by the time they get home, they're just famished. So yeah, he's definitely not eating enough fuel throughout the day. Again, he's starting with skipping breakfast. So trying to work with this athlete and kind of go backwards into helping him connect and figuring out how he can get that fuel in. So what are some of the negative effects for him of skipping breakfast? We know he's not getting enough fuel throughout the day. What are some of those negative effects that we talked about? Skipping breakfast, we know I'll kind of start you off here, but we know we're going to slow down as we need that breakfast to rev that metabolism. We want to make sure that, again, he's got enough fuel throughout the day, not only for sport, but of course for his academics. So that's another way we can try to help him connect is, how are you doing academically? Are you sleeping, and are you falling asleep in class? You need the fuel not only for your sport later in the day, but you need that fuel for academics as well. So putting those pieces together for him, trying to help him connect that. So, oops, sorry, just looking at, so what do you think Jacob can expect if he continues skipping breakfast? We've started out at the beginning of the season. We can see he's just doesn't have enough fuel. In the evening, he's overindulging, and my guess is that continues kind of until he goes to bed, and then we start all over again into this kind of feast and famine stage. So what do you think is going to happen to him, or what have you seen happen to athletes that have this sort of routine? So if he continues skipping breakfast, we're most likely going to see that his performance is going to go down. He's going to become a little bit more lethargic as the season goes on. When at the end of the season, when he's expecting to play his best, he's going to see that he may feel, I guess I could say, he might feel more weak. He might feel more tired. He might start to feel a lot of muscle fatigue and soreness. At some point, if he kind of goes through this feast or famine, he may see his body change in the way where, his body composition will change in a negative way. So there's a lot of different things that can happen. And the goal is to try to prevent all those things from happening, starting off the season well-fed and well-fueled. So yeah, I see a decline in performance, low energy for workouts again. And then of course that continued low energy can cause a lot of other things like injuries, stress fractures, and so on. So what, shouldn't be why strategies, but what strategies can Jacob use to start the day off right? A lot of these things, again, I think we can, I would say most athletes, breakfast is probably one of the meals that most athletes like to skip, at least in this particular age, this high school and collegiate age, where they really just don't feel like getting up. And so we need to encourage that and make it easy to eat breakfast. So prepare breakfast the night before, plan ahead, obviously. And then, as a sports dietitian, my goal is to make sure that we are giving them some options that they like, and even showing them how easy it is to make it. And even, asking them, I always ask the athletes, how long does it actually take you to eat breakfast? Everyone eats pretty fast. I'm not suggesting that they inhale their food and run off, but there really is time to eat a little bit, and starting off with little amounts can be less overwhelming for the athletes. So that, of course, is a great thing, not overwhelming them, because once you start to overwhelm them, they don't want to listen. All right. So again, the goal is to set up athletes for success. So if you are the athlete, think about why breakfast is so crucial, and the timing of the meals, and timing of breakfast, and then of course the other meals and snacks is obviously extremely important. Each athlete is going to be a little different. So what you need for breakfast for one athlete may be different for another. The amount, of course, is going to be very different based on timing of practices, and if there's multiple practices a day, and of course in season versus out of season. So a lot of different things to think about. But again, those balanced meals provide better fuel for sport and recovery, which is really, really important. And sometimes, we have to kind of keep repeating ourselves over and over again, sound like a broken record, but at some point when those connections are made, we can really help athletes, reach their potential. Okay. Are there any questions? Again, put them please in that Q&A, just because, like I said before, sorry, I'm repeating myself, but that chat function is not working. So if you could, if there are any questions, please certainly let me know. Again, if we can get more athletes eating breakfast, I think we can see that we're going to have more happy athletes, maybe happy teachers and happy coaches. you can a little bit more information on building a better breakfast. You can use this, can scan this QR code here. Whoops. This is, it's one of my books here, but there's some references here as well. The one thing that I wanted to explain a little bit about is my sports dietitian. Oops, sorry, I'm going to move the Q&A for 1 second. So if you do have a question, please just continue to put in. It's just going to take me a second. I just have to move it off the screen for a second. Just wanted to let everyone know that my sports dietitian recently launched a new one-on-one sports nutrition coaching program. The first 2 weeks are free as athletes, and it doesn't have to just be athletes, but coaches, strength and conditioning coaches, athletic trainers, anyone that wants to learn a little bit more can sign up. But the first 2 weeks are free to kind of figure out what you need. And again, you'll be working with a sports dietitian to answer your questions. And you can find out a little bit more by scanning that code. And of course, if you have any questions about that at all, email my sports dietitian. In addition, if you have questions or comments about these webinars, or if there are different topics that you would like to see, please don't hesitate to email and provide some feedback or some of the topics that you may want to see in the future. There is a question here who says, how do you go about counseling someone that says, I just don't have an appetite in the morning? And yep, that happens all the time. And my first response is trying to teach them what it means to be hungry, because oftentimes they don't really know what it means to be hungry, and making those connections and helping them realize, well, in fact, you actually are hungry. And these are some of the things that happen to people when they get hungry. So are you hungry? What's happening to you when you're hungry? And again, those are the signs and symptoms, so to speak, of hunger. What happens to them as they get hungry? And once they start to realize those things, they will realize that they are hungry. So that's number one. And then, of course, not overwhelming them by telling them they have to eat some huge meal. So starting off slowly, and sometimes it can be just starting with a drink, with a beverage, and then slowly moving on. Once they start doing something that seems easy, they'll be more willing to open the door. But really helping them make those connections to seeing how skipping this, I'm going to say breakfast, but it's not just breakfast, but skipping meals really does affect them later in the day. So that's a great question. Look, I think another. So another, Cynthia says that she will often tell athletes to eat a breakfast before going to bed at night if they have an early practice. And I don't have any issues with telling someone to have a nighttime snack. I never want an athlete to go to bed hungry. I don't want them to have a massive meal before they go to bed, but there's definitely some fuel that's going to be helpful to even enhance sleep, but never want an athlete to go to bed hungry, because that is always going to interrupt their sleep. Even if someone's getting up really early for a workout or a swim, I do think that they still can get some fuel in their body. They have to train and kind of change that attitude about fueling in the morning. And again, they have to train their stomach just like they would train any other muscle. So that is still, from me, I still am constantly kind of pushing it. Again, I'm not going to tell them to eat a huge meal before before an early morning workout, but we do need to get them to get some fuel in their system. And of course, you can break up that meal. It's really easy to do that. They can have a little bit and then, eat the rest of that breakfast after the workout, but really trying to help them connect. And a lot of times it's you have to kind of meet them where they are and then continue to push them to where they need to be or they need to go. Are there any more questions or comments? Really some good questions tonight. I appreciate everyone coming. Again, if there is any other questions, please throw it in the Q&A. I'm here for a couple more minutes. Again, if you have questions for us, please email my sports dietitian. Don't hesitate to reach out and let us know. And I know there are still some more Wednesday night webinars, so check my sports dietitian website or the emails that come out. And it looks like we don't have any more questions, so I appreciate it, everyone. Thank you. Thanks to all of you for showing up tonight. Thanks.